They called me to the 36th floor at 8:03 a.m. No agenda, no context. Just a calendar block titled Executive Strategy Realignment. I already knew. The elevator doors opened with their usual sigh, but the air in the corridor felt colder, like the temperature had been dialed down for effect. The boardroom was half full, a few VPs pretending to review documents, 2 outside consultants in suits that tried too hard. At the head of the table sat Riley Jex. She didn't look up when I entered, just tapped her fingers against a closed MacBook and gestured to the seat across from her with a movement too casual to be accidental. She'd rehearsed this. I sat. No handshake, no greeting, just silence and tension thick enough to hear the HVAC clicking. Then she slid the envelope across the glass table. No folder, no explanation, not even a glance. The envelope stopped in front of me like a dare. Effective immediately, she said, still scanning some invisible note on her screen. You're released from your responsibilities as Chief Strategy Officer. No eye contact. I didn't open the envelope. I didn't need to. She's efficient, Riley added to no one in particular. Her voice rehearsed and detached, but outdated. I looked at her then. Really looked. Years ago, she sat across from me in this same building, shaking, overwhelmed, one misstep away from being cut by the board. I defended her, shielded her, told the directors she just needed time. Now she wouldn't even look at me. I nodded once, not out of agreement, out of confirmation of everything I'd just learned. I stood slowly, picked up the envelope like it might burn, tucked it into my coat. Then I said what no one in the room expected. Good luck. Then I turned and walked out. Not a single pair of shoes followed me. No, not yet. By the time the elevator reached the lobby, I'd already decided I would never explain myself to anyone in that room again. I didn't need to, because I knew exactly what happened when someone tries to erase the one who built the system they're standing on. The badge blinked red, twice. I stood in front of the scanner on P3 of Virian's parking garage, staring at the light like it owed me an apology. Just yesterday, it would have chirped green before I even reached for the handle. Now, like everything else upstairs, it didn't recognize me. I stepped back and laughed once quietly, bitterly. Then I walked toward the ramp, keys loose in my hand. The car started like it always did, loyal to a fault. I pulled out slowly, merging with morning traffic as if nothing had changed, but everything had 69.6%. That was the number. I hadn't made it up. It wasn't a spin. It came from Virian's own internal report. Last fiscal year, revenue generated from systems, strategy decks, and behavioral models my division built. My team executed. I designed. And just like that, I was labeled outdated. The truth, I wasn't mad. Not really. I was something sharper than anger cleaner. Because what Riley didn't realize, what no one upstairs remembered, was that the system wasn't the company, it was me. I still had the skeleton of the onboarding architecture, the predictive behavior models, at least the ones they hadn't watered down, the client personas that I'd personally stitched together after years of late-night interviews and post-failure data audits. And more importantly, I had the people. Not all of them, but enough. I parked 2 blocks from the Vestry Hotel and walked the rest. Rooftop bar, South End, just past 10 a.m. Miles Greer was already nursing a bourbon, his tie draped over the chair beside him like a loose signature. "You look like hell," he said as I sat. "I've had better mornings." "Are you gonna fight it?" I looked at the skyline. Quiet, unmoving. "I already won," I said. "They just don't know it yet." Miles didn't smile, but the corners of his eyes shifted. He slid his glass across the table. "To ghosts," he said. We clinked glasses once. No toast. That night. I pulled the black moleskin from my shelf and flipped through pages I hadn't touched in years. The signal was still there, just waiting to be heard. The notebooks were heavier than I remembered. Black covers, scarred spines, pages stiff from ink and coffee. I laid them across my desk like blueprints from a past life. Every line, every margin scribble, held something the company had long stopped listening to. No press release, no cryptic post, no whispered "just so you know." To journalists, I didn't want attention, I wanted signal. I opened my laptop and pulled up a list. CMOs, strategy leads, quiet operators who never craved credit. Just results. The kind who'd once told me, "You see the battlefield before the rest of us know we're even in a war." I sent 6 messages. Same sentence. Each time, "How's the transition going under the new model?" I waited. The first response came within the hour. Louder than ever. Shallower than ever. The second. From a European mobility firm we helped triple in 6 months, still pretending followers equal users. The third took 12 minutes. "Can we talk off record?" It was signed by Etta Lane, CEO of a mid-market automation company. She'd once flown cross-country for a single strategy session because she said, "You read metrics like body language." I leaned back and let the screen dim. I wasn't fishing. I wasn't selling. I just asked. And they answered not out of pity, not out of loyalty, but because deep down, they already knew. They knew the noise wasn't real. They knew flash without follow-through burns fast. They knew someone had to say it out loud. So I did. The next morning, I met Etta at a cafe on Kinsey. She didn't waste time. "We've got a new dashboard, 6 new KPIs, and a vibe shift campaign we can't explain to the board." I said nothing. She sipped her espresso. "I don't want flashy. I want functional." I nodded once and didn't take notes. That night, I made a list of who hadn't replied, not because they weren't interested, but because they were probably waiting to see who moved first, which meant it was already shifting, and I already knew where I needed to be when it did. It launched on a Tuesday morning loud, animated, and aggressively on brand. Gen Z Vibe Lab, neon gradients, kinetic buzzwords, looping GIFs of models mid-laugh holding products no one asked for. There was a rotating carousel of micro-influencers, each tagged with lines like "disrupting culture and building community through color." The press fawned, tech blogs reposted. The board applauded with the kind of grin you only see when people convince themselves they understand what they're clapping for. But the clients didn't say a word. I watched the metrics roll in on public dashboards. Engagement spiked temporarily, but conversions down. Retention flatlined. The numbers moved like a crowd at a concert, loud and directionless. By noon, I had 3 missed calls. One was from Rihanna Talik. We met at a quiet corner booth downtown, the kind of place with no signage and stiff chairs. She arrived before me, already halfway through an espresso. "They want us to replicate it," she said, sliding her phone across the table. The Vibe Lab homepage blinked back at me in slow motion. Flashy, trendy, words no one understands. I asked, "Virion, the new team." "And what did you say?" Rihanna leaned back and smiled, not amused, just tired. "I told them I sell predictive AI tools to enterprise clients with 7-figure contracts, not sneakers to teenagers on TikTok." She paused. "They told me to lighten the tone." The weight of it settled between us. In 2017, Rihanna was 2 weeks from shuttering her company. I'd spent 48 hours in a windowless hotel conference room helping her pivot her entire product strategy. We built her roadmap on scratch paper and cold coffee. She didn't forget. "Trend doesn't sell," she said again, softer now. "Trust does." I didn't need to respond. Back at my desk, I reviewed her latest public numbers. Her growth had stalled, but not because of product issues. It was confusion, misdirection, noise. I wrote a note in the margin of my notebook. They're trying to impress strangers instead of serving believers. And then I circled one name, Rihanna's, not as a lead, as a signal. The loft was a subleased unit on the third floor of an old textile building in West Loop. No signage, no directory listing, just an unmarked buzzer and a set of keys that felt like a whisper. We didn't call it an office. Offices needed names. We didn't have one. Claire arrived first. She didn't knock, just walked in, dropped a tablet on the metal table, and said, "Their Q2 churn is baked in. They won't survive the fourth quarter unless they start bleeding departments." She'd been my lead analyst at Virion. Quiet then. Quieter now. She spoke in sentences that sounded like code but always meant something sharp. Last year, she'd signed 2 overlapping NDAs with competitors legally invisible, but strategically omniscient. She lived in the gaps between dashboards. Ion Duval came next. No handshake, just a nod and a printed folder, an artifact from another era. Once a high-level CMO, he'd lost his agency to a botched merger that spun gold into sand. Now he moved like someone who knew which stories were built to last and which were just campaigns dressed as purpose. Then came Mara Selwyn. She'd texted once at 3 a.m. after seeing the Vibe Lab launch and said, "This industry is eating its own." I sent an address and no explanation. She walked in mid-afternoon wearing paint-splattered jeans and eyes that had seen too many brand wars. Once the mind behind 3 viral unicorn startups. She'd burned out after her 3rd consecutive launch, where the product never shipped, but the slogan sold t-shirts. She saw through glitter faster than anyone I knew. No website, no logo, no press release. Just a shared Google Drive with no folder names, 3 prepaid phones, and 1 locked safe that held our personal notebooks. No one asked about salaries. We weren't there to pitch. We were there to watch the world start cracking and build something in the silence it left behind. That night, Mara wrote 3 words in chalk on the wall near the entry, presence over profile. And as the others unpacked their tools, I pulled out the whiteboard and drew a circle around one client's name. We had our first project. The notification came through a Slack thread I hadn't touched in months. A former engineering lead forwarded a screenshot with a timestamp and 1 sentence. "They pushed your framework live with mods. No testing window, no contingency notes, no internal QA chain." I opened my laptop and pulled up the public dashboard for one of Virion's top-tier accounts. The retention graph nosedived by 9 points in under 6 hours. 2 others showed bounce rates spiking like heart monitors under stress. They'd taken the code I wrote, the one I designed with fail-safes, warning thresholds, adaptive decay curves, and stripped it for parts, rebuilt it without understanding the timing logic, left the frame, cut out the engine. By nightfall, 3 clients had suspended campaigns. Claire glanced up from her terminal. "You seeing this?" she asked, though she already knew. "They tried to automate nuance." I said, "It never works." She tapped her keyboard twice, then turned her screen toward me. Encrypted chat logs. Private Virion channel. Not hers, someone else's. A name blinked at the top, Kessler. He'd been on the board for over a decade. Never flashy, never loud. But he'd voted to keep Riley out the first time she applied until the numbers started to look shinier than the substance. Now he was watching those same numbers hemorrhage. The message was short. "We need to speak quietly." I didn't reply. Claire waited, eyes steady. "He's not asking for advice," I said. "He's asking for an exit plan." We didn't celebrate. There wasn't time for that. Ion was already rebuilding the campaign models Rihanna's team had sent over. Mara was rewriting a narrative flow that wouldn't trip over its own hashtags. I turned back to the whiteboard and drew a red line through the Virion funnel diagram still taped to the far corner. Under it, I wrote 2 words: system fatigue. Because the thing about machines, especially the ones built on real behavioral logic, is that they don't forget who calibrated them. They only crash when someone arrogant enough believes they can run it better than the architect. The loft was quiet, except for the hum of Claire's laptop fan and the soft rhythm of a pen tapping against my notebook. We were in the middle of mapping sentiment drift across 5 key user groups when she spoke flat. Matter of fact, like she was reciting weather data. "They're still paying me." I looked up. "Who Virian's board?" "Since March. Informal consulting channel." She didn't blink. Nothing contractually binding. Just eyes on the metrics. Weekly check-ins, no attribution. I stared at her for a long beat. "And they know you're working with me." She shook her head. "No, but I think they suspect. I think they want to." It settled over me slowly. This wasn't just about Riley's arrogance or the company's decline. This was designed leakage. The board had seen the drop-off. They'd seen the Vibe Lab noise plateau. They'd seen me walk out without a single press quote, and they hadn't pulled me back. They'd sent someone to watch, to document, to leave breadcrumbs. "They don't want me to fix it," I said quietly. "They want me to be close enough to catch it." Claire kept her gaze on the screen. "They want someone to clean the floor without being invited back into the room. That kind of request silent, strategic, deniable only came from boards looking for escape hatches. They wouldn't fire Riley now. That would be too loud, too messy. They'd wait until the story shifted in their favor, until results favored another direction, until a fall looked like evolution. I scribbled 3 lines across my page. Not strategy, not revenge, just timing. Across the loft. Ion was asleep on the couch, his notes still open on his chest. Mara was curled near the windowsill with a tablet resting on her knees, headphones in, nodding to a draft voiceover she hadn't shown anyone yet. We weren't a company. We weren't even a team. We were a signal, a warning before the shift. I closed the notebook, opened a new tab, and started plotting the next 2 quarters, not by campaigns, but by inflection points. Because when succession begins in silence, it always starts with patterns. The dinner was invitation only. Buried inside a speakeasy-styled restaurant in Midtown, no signage, just a marble door and a man with a list. The kind of room where deals start with glances instead of pitches. I stayed near the back, glass in hand, no name tag, just enough makeup to be unmemorable, just enough confidence to stay invisible. That was the trick when people stop seeing you. They start telling the truth in front of you. Halfway through my drink, a voice said behind me, "You almost got away with it." I turned. Harlan Bishop, retired board member, still sharp, still 5 steps ahead of whatever was in the news cycle. He didn't wait for my reaction, just clinked his glass gently against mine and said, "Your fingerprints are all over the Onyx AI recovery." I didn't confirm. He didn't need me to. They never saw it coming. He added, "And that's why it worked." Before I could respond, he disappeared back into the crowd, as if he'd only stopped to say what needed saying. Back at the loft that night, I opened an encrypted message from a shadow relay Claire had set up. No subject line, 1 audio file. I listened with headphones, voices, chairs scraping. The clink of water glasses, Virian boardroom acoustics. About 15 minutes in, Kessler's voice cut through. Maybe we needed 1975 strategy. At least then, we made money. There was a pause. No laughter, no challenge, just quiet. Then Riley's voice, trying to recover, talking about emergent metrics and culture-led evolution. But it was brittle, her cadence frayed at the edges. Claire leaned against the wall beside me, arms crossed. "They're fracturing." I nodded, not with pride, with precision, because the worst sound a leader can hear isn't protest. It's the absence of defense. The room where decisions happen had started saying my name again, but this time, not in admiration, in memory, in hindsight, and quietly, in fear. I reached for my notebook, scrolled to the page with Rihanna's initials, and drew a clean box around them. It was time to show what our silence had actually built. The numbers didn't need spin. 4.6 times more engagement, 2.1 times higher conversions, 78% retention after 8 weeks, no logos, no press, no social campaigns, just clean architecture, modular testing, and real human behavior mapped with quiet precision. The clients started calling it the antidote. I didn't correct them. Varian's latest launch, some augmented reality gimmick, paired with a celebrity endorsement, barely made it to week 3 before cancellation. Their CMO issued a statement about shifting market variables. I watched the metrics tell a different story. They weren't shifting. They were running. Meanwhile, we kept delivering in silence. By early fall, I'd rented a lakeside cabin in Michigan, nothing elaborate, just space. 10 CMOs came, not as clients, as collaborators. We sat in a circle around the fire, notebooks on laps, bourbon in hand. There were no presentations, no pitch decks, no slogans, just data, dialogue, long pauses that didn't require filling. One exec leaned forward at one point, tapping their pen against their notebook. "What did you do differently?" I looked at the flames, then back at them. We stopped performing, started listening again. They nodded slowly, as if hearing a language they hadn't spoken in years. We stayed late, talked about fatigue, burnout, campaigns we were ashamed to approve, metrics we knew were fake but reported anyway. One by one, the walls dropped. No one was trying to be impressive. We were just trying to be honest. By midnight, I stood at the edge of the porch, watching lake mist curl around the trees like static. 10 conversations floated inside, layered and warm. Not a single person asked who had run the Onyx AI turnaround. Not one demanded proof. They already knew. Not because I told them, but because the strategy worked. In a world that rewards noise, results whisper. And we had whispered our way to transformation. The next morning, I packed up my notes and left before the last car pulled out. Back at the loft, a courier envelope waited at the door. No sender, just my name and a date. The knock was soft, deliberate, just enough weight to signal intent. I opened the door to a courier in a black windbreaker, no logo. He handed me a flat envelope, nodded once, and left without a word. Inside one sheet of cardstock. Effective immediately, Riley Jacks has stepped down as CEO of Varian. No reason, no signature, no transition plan, just a date clean, surgical. I sat for a while, letting the words settle like sediment in water. There was no satisfaction in it, no rush of vindication, just a strange kind of stillness. They didn't thank her, they didn't explain it, and they wouldn't say my name, but I didn't need them to. Because the algorithm had remembered. It remembered who had calibrated the pulse beneath the metrics. It remembered the friction points, the recovery curves, the timelines that bent toward trust instead of trends. And when the system began to wobble, it didn't cry out. It simply returned to the code that once held it steady. I walked outside, down to the edge of the lake. The water was quiet, patient. It didn't need to prove it was powerful. Neither did I. I never needed a title. I said aloud to no one, just the truth, back inside. I powered up the secure server. The shared drive blinked to life. Ghost team archives, behavioral models, test case folders, client dashboards clean, current, flawless. I selected them all. Delete, confirm, gone. No backup, no shadow copy. We'd done what we came to do. Then I opened a new browser tab, booked a one-way train to New Orleans, southbound, slow, no deck, no keynote, no campaign, just me, a suitcase, and a new beginning. Next week, I'd be speaking to a classroom of young women in an underserved district, most of whom had never touched real code, never seen their name at the top of a STEM roster, never been told their ideas were architecture. I didn't need to rebuild Virion. I needed to build something else entirely. If the system can't remember who built it, maybe it's time to teach new ones how to build better.